Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I grow and sell roses here on my farm, but before that I was a professional grower for many years. So some of my viewers have sent me along some video clips of some highly suspect propagation videos from YouTube, and they wanted me to comment on whether they were fake or not. I definitely can tell the difference, and what I'll do in this video is I'll tear them down frame by frame if necessary to show you where they're faking out the propagation methods. So the first one I want to look at here is a guy named Johnson Angling. This is not a small YouTube channel. I think he has something like, 130,000 subscribers and up to about 16 million views. So this is not a small timer. And the first video I'm going to look at is one he authored called How to Propagate Roses from Seed, which is pretty basic plant growing. I've made a video on it myself. Let's see why this has raised some skepticism. Okay, we're about 30 seconds in here, and he's stripping the petals from a flower. Actually, he's got 3 flowers here, and they all look like they're at a fairly early stage, either just in bloom or just coming out of bloom, just fading out of bloom. And I actually have to stop it already to say that most gardeners would already understand that if you went to an apple tree earlier in the season when it's just got apple blossoms on it, that the seeds aren't already there. It takes a full season for that fruit to develop, the apple fruit, and then inside of that will be the ripened seed. It's the same thing with cherries. Both apples and cherries are in the rose family. Roses are the same thing. So if you found something like this, and this is just spent flower off of one of my roses, if I cut this open, and I'll show you that, there's no way there's a ripe seed inside of this. I'll cut that open for you, but they have to get to this stage here where they have the ripened fruit. I'll show you both of those, but this one will have seed in it. This one still has 2 to 3 months to go before it has any seeds in there. No chance of that working at this point, but let's see what he does with it. Okay, here I am at about 120. He's putting in a little thing of water, and he's putting a powder in there, and it looks like something orange, like turmeric or something like that. Which absolutely is not necessary if you're trying to germinate roses from seed, but then of course he doesn't have any seeds anyway, so may as well. And just as an aside, I don't know why all these videos focus on these powders or plant juices or other things. Germinating a seed is the simplest thing on earth if you have the right temperatures and time. Okay, so he's going ahead now and he's taking those spent flowers and he's putting them into sand. And of course, if you were doing it for real, you'd be removing the seeds from those spent flowers or from the hips at that point because they'd be ripened. Of course, since he has no seeds in there, I can see how that would be a problem for him. Oh, a cute cutscene where he looks at some flowers in the garden and then he says, it's after a month. Okay, now he's got the pot here and it looks like all sorts of crap on the top of the pot. It looks like weeds and dropped seeds and dropped flower parts, and so it looks like time has passed, or at least it's implied to do so. It's stagecraft, everyone. And he's pulling this out, and it looks like it has a big shoot out of the top, which is a little confusing because there was no seed in there. And hang on, I'm going to get a closer look here, and you can see that the spent flower is still right there after a month, as if it went in the previous day. No rot, no dieback on those bracts. And it's got a full set of roots, big set of roots, and a big shoot on the top. Now, here's a problem with that. Those aren't seedlings. And anybody who's ever germinated anything knows that the first 2 leaves that come out, if they're leaves at all, is a cotyledon, a seed leaf. It doesn't look like the mature leaves of the plant. This looks like the shoot off of a mature plant that's just been plucked off or cut off and attached to the top of that spent flower. All I can really attribute this to is that basically they've taken that spent flower part and attached on, either pinned on or glued on, roots from another plant and a shoot from a mature rose. That's all it looks like. I know there was no seed in there, so that's basically all it could be. Clearly faked out and very, very disappointing. Alright, I'm going to switch channels now, give poor old Johnson Angling a break. And I'm going to look at one called Garden Easy. It's a smaller channel, but some of his recent videos have been pretty outrageous, and one of them even had about 5 million views, which is crazy. This one that I'm looking at is called How to Grow Yellow Roses from Flower Buds, which is a different kind of a method. And the reason why most propagators use the stem on a plant, 90+% of the time they use the stem, is because it's the place that's most likely to have the tissue that can turn into both roots and shoots to go upwards. Sometimes, small percentage of the time, you'll see people use either root cuttings or leaf cuttings, but almost never. I don't think I can think of a single case where propagators regularly use the flowers. So this should be interesting. Okay, starting it up here, same cheesy music, similar video style. I would not be at all surprised if this was just a content farm in South Asia that's just pumping out videos that are all variations on a theme here. But I'm going to go ahead here to, okay, so at about 50 seconds in, the video I'm showing you here now is that he's cut 2 early flower buds off of this, off of the flowers, and you can see that he's left, say, 1 centimeter of stem on one of them and maybe 2 centimeters, so under 1 inch of stem on the other one. That will become important in just a minute here. And at 1:30 here, he's burying them into, well, actually, sorry, I forgot. He uses magic formula here, just like the other one. Turmeric was the other one. This one's aloe. So he's cut off sections of aloe and he's burying that into the soil. And then at 2:14, I want to go ahead to the time-lapse portion because that's my favorite part. He does the cutscene with the flowers, so very typical of this type of video, and then says that it's 18 days that have elapsed. Okay, let's see what's happened. Okay, so this is really funny. I have to pause here because what you can see on the screen is that 18 days have supposedly elapsed, but the flowers have only opened a little bit. So anybody who's done cut flowers of any sort, or anybody who's even seen flowers in their garden, this doesn't take an expert. Gardeners know that flowers open over a shorter period than that. It's you know, that the difference between the smaller buds and the bigger ones he's replaced them with is probably only about 2 days, not 18 days. And he's tipping them out of the pot now, and you can see that there are roots. So I want to get a closer look and see what those results look like. And I think at about, let's see, 3:07, you can see the whole thing. And I'm going to freeze frame it on exactly the right frame here so you can see that the stem has gotten longer. Well, in fact, he's replaced it with a flower bud that's at a later stage and with a longer stem on it. Obviously, no growth is going to happen to the stem after you stick it in for propagation. And it's got a big, big ball of roots on there, which is just insane. So once again, I'm going to assume that these roots have been pinned on or glued on to the bottom of this flower now. Now, just imagine for a second that this were true and that the flower stalk, the peduncle, as it's called botanically, did put on a big set of roots like that. The plant still has nowhere to go with this because the flower part is a very specialized part of the plant. It does not have any vegetative shoots inside of it. It has no stem, it can't form leaves. So he's going to go ahead and put these, or plant these, into a larger pot, which is what they do at the end of all these videos. And of course it would just sit there, even if it had roots on it, would just sit there and wither and die as a flower and then do nothing, because there's no place for the plant to go from there. Well, now that you've seen a couple examples of this, you would probably be able to spot the pattern very easily. In fact, I've seen this across more than just these 2 or 3 channels. They start with the impossible sounding claim, they have the plant part, they futz around with it. You've already seen them use turmeric and aloe, but they also use other things like garlic and eggs and tomatoes and all sorts of stuff as their sort of magic flourish. Then they have the cutscene with the flowers. You find the crazy crap on the top of the pot, which is like the weeds and stuff to show you that time has passed. Then he pulls out the thing that's pasted together or pinned together that has the plant parts on it, and then plants it into a larger pot, and they do that over and over again. Here's another particularly funny example where, also from Garden Easy, where he starts with unripe rose hips and then goes through this song and dance of chopping up garlic and adding banana too, and then deliberately takes those and turns them upside down before I guess he inserts them in the banana, and then the results are the same. Big roots, big fresh shoot from the top of a rose. There's no theory under which that works, where you take an unripe rose hip, put it upside down, and it has the parts to make a full plant in there, so it must be magic. Here's the same thing, I'll give you another example, just going to a 3rd channel, DIY gardening channel, and this time it's back to using flower buds. And then once he's faked the rooting, I think in aloe this time, he comes back for another shot to insert new shoots coming from the centers of the flowers. It's completely nuts. This new generation of fakes seems to focus on the flowers and the hips, but I've seen a ton of fakes in the past talking about potatoes. And I'm going to jump back to Johnson Engling's channel here for a second and show you his roses rooted in potatoes video, because it's kind of funny. He shows a very clear shot early on of him preparing this cutting, and he does a good job of stripping off all the thorns from the bottom of the cutting before he sticks it into this potato. And then later on, when he's showing the results, and I'll put these side by side on the screen, suddenly the replacement cutting that we see him having succeeded with here has thorns back at the base. It's clearly a very different cutting. Also on Garden Easy's channel, he does the same thing, again in a potato, with two different hydrangea cuttings. And the first one that you see him put into the ground is basically a softwood or semi-hardwood cutting with the green bark on the outside of it. But by the time he digs it up to look at it, it's much larger, and it's got brown bark, which indicates it was taken from a hardwood cutting. So those are things you would spot very easily with a trained eye as to that these cuttings have been completely replaced. This is, by the way, a real shame, because I've seen Johnson Englig's channel before, and I saw him use one where he wrapped the roses in toilet paper as a way to initiate rooting, and I thought that's kind of an interesting method, and actually not so far out there that I would think it has no chance of working. I haven't tried it yet, but I did do a wet newspaper method, and it seemed to do okay, at least on callousing the cuttings, but he got these big, massive roots. But the problem is that now that I know he fakes out his results, I can't trust anything that comes from his channel. I know that there's a good chance that he just replaced the cuttings with something else that had rooted elsewhere by a different method. I do return to my question and my confusion over why it seems they always have to throw a potato or a banana or some aloe or some other herb or spice or other concoction into the mix. And I guess it's just the magical thinking element of it, and lets people believe that the thing they're seeing at the end of it that looks impossible is maybe possible if you use this magic addition to it. And I guess from the creator's point of view, if they're going to fake out the results anyway, then what's the harm? From YouTube's point of view, that question of what's the harm really does play into it, because they do have policies against misinformation, but they very specifically target those policies to police against things that cause harm in the real world or incite violence or cause physical threats. This is harmless, right? People are going to waste a little bit of effort propagating plants, or trying to, and they'll get nothing out of it, and may discourage some gardeners from coming into the hobby. It certainly does serve to discredit YouTube in general, and I run up against this every once in a while, where I tell my brother I make videos for YouTube, and he's like, that's all garbage. And this stuff kind of reinforces that and proves that point, which is kind of annoying. The only thing I really do hold YouTube accountable for is the fact that they took away the thumbs down, so there is no warning on these videos. The creator doesn't have to display a thumbs up, thumbs down ratio that would indicate that there's a problem with the information in their video. So it really just comes down to thumbnail and click-through rate, and these guys win. When it comes to real propagation videos, they get, lower views than these completely faked out propagation videos that get into the many, many millions. So it's kind of a losing situation for us as garden YouTube channels, and for you as the viewer, you're just getting bad information, and even if you can see through it, somebody doesn't see through it, and that person is going to be discouraged by the information that they find there. So the only thing I can encourage you to do as a summary of all of this is that if you really want to know how to grow a rose from a seedling, I have a video here, and to grow it from cuttings, I have a video that I'm going to put up here as well, and you can take those and use that information. Likewise, you can use any good information source on YouTube. Mike Kincaid is a good one. The Rose Geek does good propagation videos on roses. There's the Savvy Dirt Farmer, Mike McRory, Jim Putnam. I mean, there's all sorts of good resources if you actually want to know how to propagate roses. And as for these bad players out there, and it seems like they will just change their names and change their channels at will, unsubscribe, avoid, warn other people. That's all I can say on the topic. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments on this, please drop that down below the video.